It's great to virtually see you all here. Good morning and welcome to Portal. This is the 7th of our Sunday morning sessions, and welcome to Theatre Matters within and beyond the Surf Coast. My name is Stacey Bobiel, and I'm the Program Manager for Portal. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the lands on which this session is taking place today. So Portal is brought to you live from the traditional lands of the Wadawurrung and Eastern Maar people of the Doolin nations. We acknowledge them as the traditional owners and protectors of this place, and we acknowledge their ancestors who cared for the land, rivers and sea and all things living for thousands of generations. We also pay our respects to elders past, present and future. I hope you've all enjoyed this weekend's theme, where we've been celebrating all things music and the performing arts. When putting together this weekend's program and preparing the videos of all of our wonderful Surf Coast creatives, which I hope you tuned into yesterday, I've been reflecting on my own personal longing for physical contact with all things art, to visit a gallery certainly, but more poignantly to see a show. So there's something very special in sitting, standing or dancing in a room together with a group of friends and strangers and experiencing something unique together. And I think we're all missing that a little bit, but I hope in some small way Portal's program has sated some of that desire in each of you. Reading through the bios of the panel today as I prepare for this session reiterates the strength of theatre in our region. I'll hand over to our host Janet Brown soon to introduce all of the panel members this morning, but before I do so, I'd like to congratulate the Anglesey One Act Play Festival for its enormous contribution to the cultural life of the Shire for 30 years now. And each of the artists, writers and performers that are joining us today for their considerable contribution to not just that play festival, but to the diversity of conversation and their work has encouraged in the Surf Coast and beyond. For those of you who may have attended the One Act Play Festival or indeed any of the more recent Sound Doctor presentations, you will have had the unique and intimate experience of the Anglesey Memorial Hall. The significance of halls such as the Memorial Hall cannot be underestimated in terms of their contribution to community. And that hall is now exactly 66 years old, and after strong advocacy from the community in conjunction with music and performance groups like the Sound Doctor and Anglesey Performing Arts, it will receive an upgrade. So over its history, the hall has played host to multiple performances, community groups, and has acted as a local movie theatre, which I didn't know. That was obviously before my time on the coast. And it's also served as a place of celebration for many families. So a very exciting infrastructure upgrade project. We'll see improvements to the stage sound and lighting, the curtains, window treatments, as well as providing a fully functioning projector and movie screen. So we'll be making a return to those days. But for this project to proceed, a commitment from the community is required, and the project is now costed and is shovel ready, but watch this space for further announcements of a very special fundraiser that'll be coming up in the months ahead. Anyway, so on to today's session, Theatre Matters. Our host for today's session is Janet Brown. Janet is a writer whose short stories, plays and short film have won prizes in Australia, the UK and Canada. Her work is published in major newspapers and national magazines, as well as in books and literary journals. She has lived in the Surf Coast hinterland since 2006. Janet has been writing for theatre since 2000. Her work has been staged locally in Geelong, Melbourne and Sydney. Janet introduced her work to this region with the play One Plane, One Pearl, a winner of the Geelong The Right Stuff Playwriting Award in 2004. I think we were talking about that earlier with Nikki. It was staged by the Anglesey Performing Arts and was directed by Nicky Watson, one of our other panel members today, in 2005 in a combined APA, the Anglesey Performing Arts and Torquay Theatre Troupe production. It has also been performed as a radio play since. In 2009, Janet and writer Sandy Fairthorne launched Brown Fairthorne Theatre Projects to produce their own work. They toured 3 projects in the Surf Coast region, Small Bites in 2010, Making Waves in 2011, and Le Jardin de ma Mère, Janet's adaptation of the Colette story Cedo, which also went to Melbourne. Since then, Janet has had a number of new plays produced by companies in the region, including 3 plays with Christine Davies' Skin of Our Teeth. Most recently, When Hetty Met George at last year's Anglesey One Act Play Festival. Janet's The Hope Song, which I'm sure a lot of people in this region are very familiar with, had 3 wonderful seasons with APA, directed by Iris Walsh-Howling. Last year it was staged at the Sydney Fringe by Crying Chair Theatre Company, directed by Socrates Otto. Sox is currently putting the finishing touches to a film version of the project made in ISO with his Sydney cast. So before I pass over to Janet, I want to encourage everyone watching to express their thoughts about the session via the chat. You can find this at the bottom of your screen. We're collating all of this feedback to help council in the planning of future arts and culture programming. So it's a really great opportunity to let us know what you really like and what you might want to see coming up. When making comments, please make sure you click the drop down that selects all panellists and attendees so everyone can see your comments. Otherwise, we may not see it. We'll also be inviting questions from the audience today at the end of the session. So if you think of any questions for any of our presenters today, please use that Q&A function as we're going along. You don't have to wait until the end. And then at the end, I'll rejoin the session and we'll have a bit of a Q&A. So I'll now hand over to Janet to introduce the rest of the cast, or should I say panel, for today's session. So thanks, Janet.
Thank you very much, Stacey, and thank you for making us feel so well looked after with all the techie stuff and organising everything for today. It's my very great pleasure to host this panel session today and to introduce you to 4 fantastic representatives of theatre workers in our region who work very hard on the Surf Coast and who are very talented and who've had a huge amount of experience both on and off stage. Their faces will be familiar to those of you who are regular theatre goers on the coast. And so it's my great pleasure to begin with Janine McKenzie. Welcome, Janine. Janine's president of, and I'm reading obviously, so excuse me doing that. Janine's president of the Anglesey Performing Arts Troupe and has been in that role for 5 years, and she acts and directs with the company. And she also collaborates on the coordination of the Anglesey One Act Play Festival, which is an annual event and a big weekend for Anglesey, normally held this weekend. Janine is also a highly experienced speech, drama and theatre studies teacher with more than 25 years to her teaching career. She has a Master of Education and has been a delegate at national and international drama conferences and a presenter at multiple Drama Victoria state conferences. In 2015, Janine was awarded Victorian Drama Teacher of the Year. She's been a VCE assessor for nearly 20 years, and within both an educational context and community context, Janine's worked as a director, producer, actor, designer, with a particular interest in lighting and set design. She moved to Geelong in the late 1990s and since then has worked with other companies besides APA, including Geelong Rep, Torquay Theatre Troupe, Comic Genius, who presents at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival, Theatre of the Winged Unicorn, which is the series company, and Back to Back Theatre, amongst other companies. Warm welcome to you, Janine. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to introduce Nicky Watson. Nicky is an actor, producer, director, disability arts advocate, wearable art maker on the Surf Coast, and she has a long-standing involvement again with Anglesey Performing Arts, and her work with the companies, again, very diverse, roles in events management, governance, directing and performing. Nikki was the curator of the Anglesey One Act Play Festival for 5 years and currently continues in a producing capacity. As an actor, Nikki's played many roles in over a dozen APA productions that have spanned the last 17 years, as well as toured several extended seasons in Geelong, Melbourne and regional Victoria. Outside of the Anglesey Performing Arts Company, Nikki's performed with Geelong Rep, Torquay Theatre Troupe and Medimime, and has been awarded Best Director at One Act Play Festivals. Warm welcome to you, Nikki.
Thanks.
And I've got the next section of Nikki's work as a community and education producer with Back to Back Theatre in Geelong. Back to Back is a company with an ensemble of actors with an intellectual disability. And Nikki has travelled extensively with this company internationally, supporting the artists on the global stage. And within that company, Nikki leads the community and education programs. So it'll be interesting to hear more about that later on, Nikki, but as we get into our conversation. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Janet. Thanks for having me.
And now I'd like to introduce Maryanne Doolen. Maryanne's from Torquay Theatre Troupe, and she has a career in education and professional writing and editing. She's been a primary teacher, a school librarian, a TAFE teacher. She continues writing and editing and works at Deakin University providing academic support to students. Now, Maryanne's a founding member of Torquay Theatre Troupe, and she was present at the first meeting of a group who wanted to be involved in producing and performing plays. And it all began with the community board notice in the IGA supermarket in 2001. Maryanne was a force in the creation and continuance of TTT, has been a committee member for its entirety, president from 2002 to 2010, and then again 2014 to 2016. Maryanne's directed 4 productions, appeared in 20, produced 5, and is involved in most Torquay Theatre Troupe productions in some way or other. You can just tell from these bios that once you're involved with these companies, they just don't let you go, do they? And last but not least is Michael Baker, another Torquay Theatre Troupe person. And Michael's been involved with making theatre for over 40 years now, as an actor, director, builder in lighting design, etc. He has a Bachelor of Arts in Theatre, and he spent 12 years working in the film TV industry as a set decorator, prop master, and in production design. And that was before you came to Australia, wasn't it, Michael, when you were in America? Michael's been involved with Torquay Theatre Troupe for several years and has a great reputation among audiences for his acting work, where he's played many main and supporting roles in shows. Michael's also got a particular responsibility as one of the company members who's been very involved in lobbying council for a permanent home for the Torquay Theatre Troupe for many years. He's currently an active member of the Surf Coast MAC committee, who are working hard on the proposal to transform the Sport and Recreation Centre into a facility that is a home for Torquay Theatre Troupe and a multi-purpose and flexible venue for performing and visual artists. Welcome to you, Michael. Thank you all for joining us. It's really lovely to have you here. Your rich experience is, you know, what we're going to get to talk about in an hour or so is really only going to give our guests who are watching us a sample of the sorts of things that have been so crucial to your lives in theatre and your contribution to the arts as theatre makers on the Surf Coast. So, you know, this weekend would normally be the Anglesey Performing Arts hosting weekend for the One Act Play Festival. 30 years it would have been celebrating this weekend. And it's the big event for theatre on the calendar each year in the coast. Janine and Nikki, to start with, can you tell me how it's evolved over the years and explain to us where the participating companies come from, your judges, your audience, and why you see this festival as being so important?
Do you want to talk first, Janine?
I thought you could do the history of it, Nikki.
Yeah, sure. So as Janet said, it's been going for 30 years this year, and normally we would find ourselves all tucked up in the Anglesey Hall this weekend, and it's like the busiest and most hectic weekend of the year. It's quite amazing. A lot of the theatre companies that come, they come from regional Victoria. Many of them come year after year. They book accommodation in Anglesey, and they just have a whole weekend of watching theatre. So for those people who might know much about it, it's a weekend of one act plays. So the criteria is the plays have to go less than 40 minutes. And it can't just have one person in the show. So it can't be a monologue. It needs to have two actors that are there, and there's dialogue within the performance. So we engage an adjudicator to come and watch all these performances. We have usually between 14 and 18 entries every year, and so that runs over 2 days, and so it's quite an exhaustive task for the adjudicators. We try and get adjudicators that come to us from all areas, and also those adjudicators that come to us may not have done one act play festivals before. They may work professionally within the arts in Melbourne, and they come down, we put them up for the weekend, and then they have the onslaught of watching 18 plays in one weekend. So it's quite a massive weekend for them. And the other thing that happens with the festival is we have our local theatre companies like Torquay Theatre Troupe come, Geelong Rep enter, and so there's this great local feeling that happens with the festival, as well as Kyneton and Castlemaine and Ararat and Ballarat who come together. They're just to name a few companies who come every year. So it's a great sense of community and a great sense of people doing what they love and sharing their craft in the arts.
Well, last year your adjudicators were Hanny Rayson and Michael Cathcart, and that was quite a coup. I mean, you usually do have very, very well-known theatre people involved as judges, and that is, I think, one of the really important aspects of the festival. Mm. And it's great. It's just such a fun weekend for people who come in the audience, catch up with all their mates, meet new people, and it's the diversity of the entertainment that's on over the weekend. It's great.
Yeah, and there's not forgetting that we run a little cafe in the weekend, and anyone out there who knows Betty Butterworth, you've got to come and have her cakes, which is part of the community sense of what's happening at the festival. There are people who come to the festival year after year who might have holiday homes down at Anglesey, and they make sure that they come back to their holiday homes that weekend so they can experience the festival and what it has to offer.
Yes. And Janine, what do you see as the importance of the festival?
I think that was an amazing overview from Nikki, and I think she really was able to distill the highlights of the festival. I guess, it is something to work towards, and a lot of those theatre companies, including ours, that create work for Anglesey Performing Arts One Act Play Festival are also touring it around the other towns that have the One Act Play festivals too. So I guess for a number of the companies, they're sort of on the circuit, and that's enlarging the connections, I suppose, kind of spreading the web out a little bit, so that the theatre companies that are often quite small and doing their fun thing on a cold night in a public hall somewhere or other in regional Victoria are starting to get a sense that they're not alone too, that there are a whole lot of other people who love doing what we do, getting together with often really good friends, and coming together in a collaborative way, in a fairly democratic way often, to decide on the kind of work that we'd like to, kind of undertake and bring to fruition on a stage. And that lovely kind of celebration of what we're all doing in our little pockets around the state, and coming together. And I think even though it's a competition because there are prizes and all that sort of stuff, it is a festival in that sense too, of we're celebrating the community that we have created in our own little pockets. And we're seeing too that we're not alone in doing that, that there are a whole lot of people around the place who are turning up to rehearsals and having cups of tea and, getting prompted and, kind of getting a bit more and more anxious, biting down the nails as the curtain opening is looming on the horizon. So I guess there's that kind of sense of the joy. There's a tremendous amount of joy. That's my feeling about the festival, that there's a lot of joy on stage, backstage, in the cafe and in the audience too. And I think one of the things that our adjudicators do find is that there's a really kind of vibrant cultural tradition that they enter when they come into the Anglesey Hall for the One Act Play Festival in Anglesey. They are coming and seeing. There's a whole lot of people who've turned up to just about every one of those festivals year after year, in the audience as well as on the stage. And I think it's a bit like Brigadoon. Sometimes people they enter into the One Act Play Festival and they go, "What's this thing?" And we all go, "Well, it's been going on for a very long time." And over the last few years, I keep hearing people kind of indicate that they will, make sure that they'll put this weekend on the calendar for next year because they don't want to miss it. And I think that the other thing we've got is volunteers. I just saw a comment from Martin Duke come up there. Hi, Martin. And Martin's very strongly been involved with Torquay Theatre Troupe, but he's also been a great supporter of ours. And I think that's one of the things that kind of the army of volunteers that gets kind of, animated again around this time of the year, I suppose a couple of months earlier, traditionally, when we start to bring together the roster of volunteers, which means that people who haven't been, turning up to rehearsals and they're not interested in that aspect necessarily of creating theatre, but they are wanting to be a part of this event. They want to contribute. And I think that's one of the things that I most love about the One Act Play Festival. And I must say too, I've done some things with Torquay Theatre Troupe in the past, and they've got that kind of sense of, the army comes together and we do something big that none of us could do on our own. And I suppose it's that kind of sense of the collective efforts and the payoff that comes from being involved in something that only can be realised with a large group of people with diverse interests and skills. So that's kind of the thing I like about it, I think, the most.
It's really interesting to hear in the conversation and even in the introductions the way there's such a nexus between the two prominent theatre companies on the coast, TTT and APA. And yet there's also an essence of each company has its own essence, and there's an overlap. There can be an overlap of people working on projects with one and then the other, but the two companies are quite different. How do you see the difference in the sort of the work you do and the model of your company? How do you see the differences as your companies evolve? Maryanne, in particular, you would have seen huge differences going back to that very early work you did. But where you sit now with the work that you do and the way you invite people into your company and to work behind the scenes or on stage, it is a different sort of model to the APA group. So who can I ask to talk to that one? Janine and Maryanne, perhaps?
Sure, I can say something initially and maybe Maryanne can elaborate. I suppose that it's been an organic thing with APA, I suppose all of these things are organic. They started with something and they were innovated, and there was a vision, and the people who contributed formed the character of the organisation or the company. I think one of the things that APA has evolved into, I suppose, has been strongly identified as an ensemble that is open to other people coming in, but it really sits with a very core group of people who pretty much sign up for everything that we do, and perhaps we take on different responsibilities too. I guess the thing that we've got is perhaps not so much a yearly schedule and a commitment to producing a set number of plays or a season in that sense. We tend to find something that we're really passionate about, and we really go into a great deal of depth in terms of the exploring of it. Often we've been working over the time that I've been involved with APA with playwrights like you, Janet, and with Jules Allen, who's another playwright and actor who's got a strong connection to the Surf Coast, Sandy Fairthorne. We've had those strong connections with local playwrights, but also other playwrights from history, from all over the world. So I guess what drives us is initially a passion for a particular work that we want to develop and present to our audience, and that we find challenging, and we expect our audiences will find challenging too. So that's, I suppose, in summary, what I think characterises APA. Maryanne, what about you?
Yes, we do different models. We change our roles each time. Sometimes acting, sometimes you're directing, and we love guest directors because it's really we do it because we want to act, and we do this work because we want to act. That's kind of changed a little now because for community more than for adults. So we really do it because it's hard work. And because you are working so hard together and you're tired and you get to see each other's foibles. It's like a family where you know everybody, and that is so trusting of people to be able to expose themselves to other people and trust that they will hold that safely.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point when you talk about trust in theatre. And one thing I've noticed, and I'm not a performer, but I know that when people work together on a show, it can build relationships, build friendships very quickly, because you're really relying on a person. You're in their personal space. It is a very unusual experience to perform on stage with other cast members, and even if you don't know them, it becomes inevitable that intensive work over, maybe, well, a lot of companies do sort of a 6 or 8 week rehearsal phase. Usually APA does a lot longer than that, I know, but I think for a lot of companies it's about 6 to 8 weeks. And then you've got your few weeks that your show's on, and then it's over. And you might not see some of those people again for perhaps a couple of years, because they might not be on the next project. But there seems to be a bond because you've been together intensely working. And this trust thing, I think, is what's underpinning it. Probably a bit in a similar way to members of a football team or a netball team or something like that. It is a team sport, isn't it, theatre? Everyone's got their responsibilities. Michael, with regards to your involvement with Torquay Theatre Troupe, looking back over the years that you've been involved, what do you feel has been the troupe's contribution to arts on the Surf Coast?
Gracious. Yeah. So, what's been the look? It's been, I think, fairly massive. The troops uh, add to the value of the arts on the Surf Coast. So I came into the troupe, I think it was 2002, I think just a year after it initially started. And like Maryanne, I saw something, and it was actually the local paper, when the local paper literally was two pieces of it had, I think, 4 pages. It had a front and a back, and that was about it. And I went along to that and met with this group of people who had just started creating an artistic expression in a theatrical way, and got involved, and was from there. I think it has just, obviously it's grown. I mean, literally the first couple of shows we did, we had lights, for example, that were hand built out of what barbecue lights and tin cans. Those were our lights on a stage that was the size of a thumbnail at the Senior Citizens Hall. And from there, it has grown. Not only is the stage grown, because we kept trying to add onto it. Can we just add another 2 more feet so we could have just a little bit more room? And much to the senior citizens' chagrin, they generally said yes. And then once we had that, they went, oh, wow, this is actually kind of not a bad thing to have. And by growing the actual space and the desire and the drive of the community to be involved in this, it has expanded something that was severely missing within at least Torquay. Now, Anglesey's different because they've been there for a longer period of time. They've had a space to use for a much longer period of time, and I think in Torquay, that piece of the puzzle was just absent. And the troupe came along and sort of filled that void and started to expand the knowledge and the experience of not only people just in Torquay, but also up and down the Surf Coast, but also, it reaches into, as it does with APA, reaches into a lot of different places. There's a lot of people from outside of the Surf Coast, outside, they're up in Melbourne, they're in large reaches, who come down, who have holiday houses, who have experienced years, have come down camping, et cetera, who now have an artistic venue to come and be involved in. So I think the troupe has certainly been part of raising the profile of arts within the Surf Coast, full stop.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And I think it's very interesting for audience members who go regularly to the theatre that's shown on the coast, to watch the development of the companies and to recognise changes, and to recognise, they're attempting plays like this now, or they've got new directors in, or there's new people on, involved in the cast, and they feel a certain ownership of it's like their team, and they feel, oh, well, they've got a show on, I must go. And there is nothing like sitting shoulder to shoulder in an audience, having that collective experience of that ephemeral theatrical experience, where even the show on a Friday night can be rather different and have a different feeling to that same show in the following performance. And it really is one of those art forms where you've got to be there. If you're not there, you've missed it. And the audience brings so much to the experience, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I'd like to take a little bit of what you just said, which is the town, or the ownership of the troupe in and of itself, or again with Anglesey, same scenario. You do get to go and see this, whilst there's a core group of people you get to see. It is your favorite sort of your favorite people up on stage doing different things, and you get to also see the genesis of new people coming in and experiencing theater for the first time. Maybe they come as a 20-year-old or a 16-year-old or a 50-year-old, who are brand new, who step up and are standing on stage for the very first time, and then year after year after year, they get hooked, and you get to experience their growth as they attempt new things. As you said, Janet, they try new, more expansive plays. They are attempting to reach deeper depths within their own selves. And as a community, you get to see that growth of them on stage. And I think that is a valuable thing. And making the sports analogy, I think, is pretty well spot on. You get to see them when they're rookies, when they first show up and are playing the hardcore, seniors team. And then at the end of their career, you get to see the masters that they've become, because they have learned from all of their experiences, surrounded by people who are equally as passionate about it as they are, or to bring forward that passion and help them discover their own passion. And you can't do that in any other way than, well, not any other way, but you can't do that without having a collective group of people willing to give of their time and their experience and their joy of being involved in the theater.
And this, to me, is the importance of companies like your own companies that have been around for many, many years, because some companies don't survive. They can be fleeting. They can do 1 or 2 shows and then move on or stop producing, and that's it. But when you've got 2 core companies on the Surf Coast, where we live, and well, it's not where we all live. Janine, you're in Geelong, but you spend so much time down here. We think of you as a Surf Coast person, but to have these 2 companies with such a long history, the expectation is that they're going to survive and keep going. That expectation, yeah, fingers crossed, Michael. I absolutely understand and respect that. And often I think we don't hear enough about what's required to enable that to happen, the resources that enable that sort of longevity to be maintained, and not just maintained, but to develop, grow, expand, and build. What's the risk if you don't have those resources? Who'd like to speak to that? Yeah.
Janet, just like Michael, when I became involved in APA, that was also through the newspaper, which was 2 pages, Michael, by the way. And it was an ad saying that this little theatre company is about to fall over. And so I was having a crisis meeting down at the Anglesey Hall. This was in 2003. So I was living in the hinterland of Surf Coast Shire, where you lived, Janet, at the time. And so I drove down there, went to this meeting, and I walked out with a bunch of keys, a box, and I was now the new president. And so at that moment, there was this huge transition for APA. There was people that were running APA that had really just burnt out, and they'd been putting on kind of cabaret type shows, which involved catering and these great shows, but it was a lot of effort, and they'd come to a turning point. And so not long after that, a few key people came together, another crisis meeting, and people like Iris Walsh-Howling came in, and there were a few people like Lena Libraperto who were longtime members of APA, and the company just transitioned. And luckily, we have this amazing space down at APA. We are so grateful for the space we have. It's still got very old infrastructure, as you know, like it's got the oldest lighting grid hanging up there, and sound-wise, we spent a lot of money on speakers for the company as well. But just having people to go, we can roll with this, and that's essentially what we've done, and we've kept going. But then you go, at what point do our companies transition again? We've got to keep feeding from the bottom. Like Auskick, you've got to feed from the bottom, and you've got to bring new people in, you've got to bring young people in. And we do this in a way where, it's fortunate that quite a few of us are connected to education, and we can bring students in who want to work with us. And we're trying to build that, but it is hard, and it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of energy to bring new people in and get them enthusiastic about what we're doing.
Yeah. It's just mentioning that thought about, education, Janine, with your career as a theatre teacher, I think it's wonderful to see that, your commitment to your teaching, but your involvement as a practicing theatre artist, one helps the other, doesn't it? You know, but in many ways, theatre is your life, isn't it? It's your career, and it's your off work time as well.
It is. It feels kind of vocational, I suppose, in the sense of it being all consuming, and it is fueled by a love. And you know, Michael, I really loved the way that you were describing the process and the growth that takes place. And I suppose that is one of the things that I see. There is a master apprentice kind of model that operates in theatre, and we go through those, you know, that growth because of the experiences that we have with different people, and where we're willing to go personally in terms of plumbing new depths. So I really endorse absolutely everything that you talked about in terms of the process. I guess too that I was the beneficiary of others who went before me. My own speech and drama teacher was incredibly influential in terms of my skill set, but the vistas that she opened up for me, the kind of the understanding about this amazingly rich world of literature that existed out there, that, you know, that really set me on the course that that I've taken in my life. And I guess I don't do it. I don't kind of pass on that knowledge in any, you know, in any sense of, out of any sense of duty, but out of a sense of the possibilities that can be opened up for entering into this kind of creative work, and the continual personal growth that comes about, and the opportunities. I suppose that's the other thing, like with theatre companies that exist as ours do, that then provides opportunities for younger versions of us, you know, the people who are now who are young like we were when we first got involved in theatre. There is an opportunity for people who want to find their tribe, you know, because I guess that's the other thing about theatre people. We are a bit of a tribe, aren't we, you know? And when we find our tribe, there is a tremendous amount of a great sense of belonging, and a great sense of freedom to start to be more fully, you know, to more fully realise the things that we that give us the joy, that inspire us, that we crave to express. So I guess for me, the bringing into the APA Theatre Company, a lot of my students who, so for example, I think maybe the first thing that I did with some students was Picnic at Hanging Rock, where we had a chorus of schoolgirls who were, you know, the students at Appleyard College, but also some of the major roles, and a lot of the young actors that worked with us on that came from my teaching context from Clonard College. And then, you know, since then we've had, for example, last year I had a number of my Year 12 students come and do tech work, be kind of crew. So they were stage managing, and they were doing front of house and doing some of the tech stuff. And Michael would like to speak, so I'm handing it over to you, Michael.
No, I wanted to add on to what you were saying, Janine, which is the bringing in of youth, and how important that is in their development as artists. So when you're in high school or junior high school or whatever, you're surrounded by your peers, and you're all playing parts of people who are 50 and 40 and 30, and whatever the script requires, you're handed that as an opportunity. But with a community theater, and I think that's really the key, is that these are both community theater organizations, that you suddenly are given an opportunity to work with people who are actually of that ilk. There are people who are in their 30s or 40s or 50s or 100s or 20s. Whatever the case may be, there are people of all sorts of varieties of gender and that allow you to actually step and experience the world as an artist, as a teenager who's involved in theater, perhaps at high school, into a world that is available to you that you don't get if you have to go out there into the world and try and make it as try and make a living out of it. It's not available. That's where the community theater is so important, because it gives those kids the opportunity to work with people who have been involved on such a deep level that they don't get in high school. It's really fun to get together and do fun shows with your peers, but suddenly you get to work with people who are actually 50 years old and have been doing this a long time, and suddenly your eyes as a student, they just open up and go, oh my goodness, right. And you really get to have an opportunity to show your own chops on that stage with these people. And I think to Janine's point, it's so important to be able to have some place to bring students where the students want to come and are appreciated and feel valued within that space to come in and be involved. And Picnic at Hanging Rock, which I saw Janine's, that's a prime example of these students, a whole bunch of them getting together, working with older people. And I'm sure that their experience was really, really valued on both sides, from the older people and the younger people.
Yeah, it absolutely was. And I'm still in touch with those students, and I guess it has that it makes that impression on people, doesn't it? I know that even as a teacher, when I tell people that I'm a drama teacher, invariably people will say, "Oh, I remember this role that I played when I was 12, and I can still remember the lines." And I think that's one of the things that it makes such a deep impression on us. And Janet, you were talking about trust before. I suppose one of the things that happens is that it's a really heightened experience to be involved with a theatre performance, but the process as well is what I suppose makes the performance so rich. That the process has often has required of us that we do trust, take a leap of faith, take some risks, open our ears and listen to some other people, all those kinds of things. And then the really kind of strong impact that having a performance has as an actor, and it has makes an indelible impression on us. And it is formative too. I mean, it actually shapes us. Theatre doesn't just take who we are and then, show that off. Theatre changes who we are. Theatre makes us who we are. It shapes us. We are formed by our experiences. And I think to go to what you were saying before too, Michael, I don't want to just kind of keep going backwards, but it's that link that you were talking about in terms of the growth of actors. The theatre being involved with it, making it shapes and changes who we are. And then as audiences can see, we continue to change and grow and explore and become different through the experience of it. Anyway, I've ranted long enough. It's time for somebody else to talk.
I think that's a great segue into talking with Nikki about her experiences with Back to Back. Now, I know, Nikki, that your work with APA for several years is what gave you the fundamentals to step into a role at Back to Back several years ago. And I know it's been a very rich experience for you. Could you tell our audience about this wonderful theatre company, Back to Back, which is based in Geelong? And I always claim it is probably Australia's most successful internationally touring production company. But would you tell us some more about the company, please, Nikki, and your role with it?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the community and education producer at Back to Back Theatre. Back to Back Theatre is based in Geelong. It's been operating for over 30 years. It basically came about when the deinstitutionalisation of people with disability, and they closed big institutions and moved them into the community, and a group of people were at a bit of a loss as to how they were going to fill their day, and that's basically how it was formed. So our actors identify as neurodiverse. We have an ensemble of professional actors who make work from their hearts and minds. They make work over a very long period of time, over a 3-year period. And So we have about 6 actors that work at Back to Back Theatre, but we also have a very strong community and education arm, and that's the arm that I look after. The image you're looking at now, just in terms of community, one of the things we're really passionate about is inclusive practice. So not only running a program for people with disability, but running a program where people with disability and people without disability can come and partake in great art making. And this is an example of that. This is a weekend that we call CAMP, which stands for Come and Make Performance, and where we have an intense, ruthless theatre making weekend with people of all abilities come together, and we engaged amazing guest artists to come and run these workshops. And so the company, at the moment, it's a really interesting time, of course, because normally we would be doing 3 to 4 months of touring this year. And we find ourselves grounded like the rest of everybody else. So we have had to shift ourselves and find a new way of connecting. And when COVID first stopped, at the top of our list was, we now have a very vulnerable group of people with disability who are at home with no other social connection potentially. So our first thing was to connect with our actors and make sure that we could connect online with them. And we've been working hard running online workshops. We've been still managing to connect with specialist schools such as Nelson Park, and we've made animation with the kids there, which has been really important work because, again, they're a very vulnerable group of people whose families were at their wits' end going, I've got this child with a disability at home and I don't really know what I need to be doing to support them as they're supposed to be at school. So we made animations and got online and worked with those students. So my role's largely around connecting in the community. I do a lot of advocacy work for the company. When somebody has a person with a disability in their life and they want to connect them to the arts and they live locally, they Google Geelong Disability Arts or Geelong Disability Theatre, and what comes up, Back to Back comes up immediately at the top of their list. So they give us a call, and then the calls usually come to me. And one of the things I'm really passionate about is, how do we connect people, not just on a professional level with the arts, but in the community, like our communities, our theatre companies that operate on the Surf Coast? How do we go, why do we look around our groups and go, there's nobody here with a disability, for instance, because I feel like it's really important to connect them. And I want to just give a shout out to the Winchelsea Community Theatre, the Globe Theatre in the hinterland of the Surf Coast, because I feel like they are a theatre company on the Surf Coast as well, and they fly under the radar a bit, and they are what epitomises community. Like, they run these amazing community theatre productions out at Winchelsea, and like I have connected some of my actors to that company who are now doing work with that group. And so I think it's really important that we act as advocates and we think about, work outside the square about, how can we engage somebody to work within our company. Also, we get contacted a lot at Back to Back for professional roles. We're often linking them with productions with the Malthouse or with television screen productions, because we're working in screen at the moment as well. At Back to Back, we've extended that as another one of our arms.
And Back to Back, the ensemble, they tour the world, Nikki, don't they? They go to the major theatre festivals throughout Europe, America, the UK. I know you've been to Brazil and other South American countries. It's a real hallmark of Back to Back's practice that their wonderful ensemble takes this innovative work that they devise around to world audiences, and they have a fantastic reputation for what they do. I've long been interested in the writings of Oliver Sacks and the interesting things that he talks about as being transformative when people perform. It's that playfulness. Janine touched on it before about acting being a transformative experience, that it doesn't just stay with you for the time that you're on stage. it becomes part of you. And I know, Michael, you obviously believe that performance itself is a very special and important practice. We've heard Maryanne talk about the idea that the theatre experience, the community theatre experience, is a great bonding experience, great for socialising, making friends, building relationships, that kind of thing. But there is another layer as well, and it's a very deep layer, and it affects any one of us, no matter what level, no matter what ability people have. This opportunity to play, to take on a role, it's profound, isn't it?
I guess one of the great things about art, I just wanted to say is you can't measure creativity. And like, just going back to people with disability, I think there's a lot of measurement that happens in their life. They get their IQ measured and they get told your IQ is this, you should go to this specialist school to accommodate your level of IQ. But in the arts, you can't measure creativity. So how high is the glass ceiling? So that's when it becomes really exciting to work in a diverse way with people, because what people bring to the table is they bring their experience and their perspective, and that's often a perspective that, as a person without a disability, I've never considered, and that's what makes it really interesting. Sorry, Michael.
That's what we want to see on our stages, isn't it?
Absolutely.
More of the variation of life experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, more of those stories too.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're stories that we don't consider often. And it's a little bit, Michael, about what Torquay Theatre Troupe has been working on, their little side project where they've made like a few little monologues, and it's somebody's like little snippet of their experience of what's happening for them in COVID. And some of it you can connect with, and some of it you go, I haven't really considered that person's point of view on that before. So it's exciting. It makes exciting theatre.
Thank you, Nikki. Now, notwithstanding that work, I'd also like to acknowledge your own directing and acting work. And I think we've got a photo there, Stacey, that you might be able to show us of a very successful play that you directed, Nikki, called Love, Lost and What I Wore. That was just, 2 or 3 years ago? With your Anglesey ensemble cast of women, and you travelled around to some one-act play festivals with that one, and it was an award-winning show for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So, and we also took it to Torquay Theatre Troupe, and we did a bit of a double act there. They did one play, and we put this performance on. I guess why I put this photo forward was because I wanted to talk about, and we've touched on this today, talking about trust and talking about what it is to work with people over a period of time, and what it is to bring people that are new into what we're doing with a theatre company. And I have done mainly performing with Anglesey, and I haven't directed very much. But when I do get the chance to direct, it's such a great learning experience as a performer to direct, because you start to see it through different eyes. And I can see you nodding your little head off there, Michael. And, I work with this amazing bunch of women on this particular show, and it's like they get their heart, they take it out, they put it in a box and they give it to me for the duration of the creativity process. And you go, you're so generous and you're so trusting. They're so trusting of what we do as a director. They trust every part of it. It's amazing to work with such dynamic, wonderful, strong, and in this case, women. I mean, we have men who come and perform with APA as well, but quite a few of these women, like within their own right, there's writers in there, there's musicians, there's visual artists. They all bring like incredible energy and incredible skill. So I just wanted to touch on that as I think that it's important. And again, Janet, you've talked about this, that you get this sense of belonging to something. You walk into the Anglesey Hall before it even is a theatre, and you breathe in and you smell the Anglesey Hall. I don't know if the Senior Sits does that too to you. And I don't know what that smell is, and maybe I don't want to know what that smell is. But when I walk into the Anglesey Hall, I'm like, oh, there's this thing that goes, you're home again. And all these memories connect to this really familiar thing. And then, the Anglesey Hall, when it's in its boot scooting or its yoga phase, it's a hall. It is just a stripped back hall. But when it turns into a theatre, my gosh, it comes alive and it fills my cup. I walk out going, you've completely filled my cup, and and it fills my spirit, and I feel very humble. I drive back to Torquay because I'm living in Torquay now, and I just got this stupid smile on my face. And in the car, it's 11 o'clock at night. I've just done a 3-hour rehearsal and gone over the same scene, and I'm like going, I feel so amazing. And that's the true essence of what these types of communities build for people, that live in the community.
Yeah. Look, that's fantastic to hear that. It's interesting that, Maryanne introduced the word trust into our conversation earlier, but we've hit on that term over and over again, haven't we, as being a really fundamental aspect of making theatre. Now, I'm going to go to Maryanne and Michael now. It was so interesting, Nikki, to hear you talk about this sense of place with the hall at Macmillan Street. Michael and Maryanne, Torquay Theatre Troupe, have been sharing the Senior Sits Hall at Torquay for their shows for many years, and for many years have been lobbying council for a place to call home. And I know Michael's efforts have been rather extraordinary with that. You are very determined, Michael, and I know you've got the troop behind you, driving you to be that way. What does it mean to you to have a place to call home for your performances?
Maryanne, I could go on to this for a while. So do you want to jump in and throw in something here before I take off?
No, go on.
Okay. So, man, just to what Nikki has just said, she's encapsulated so brilliantly what a theater does to you, not just in a sense of a gathering and of a place to stand up on stage or to stand backstage or to be involved in selling of tickets or to be involved in the community, but the actual physical existence of the space, the smell, the dust, the sight, the brick that somebody wrote their name on and then scratched it back out, the piece of scenery that got stuck up on the ceiling that nobody bothered to take down from 20 years ago, the prop room that's full of stuff that people have used from anywhere from Hamlet to Waiting for Godot, of anything that you get an opportunity to go in and pick up the piece of prop that looks so real from the audience, and then you actually discover that it's just a bunch of baling twine and a piece of rope or something. But the magic that exists within this space, that is so important to bring people back together, to bring them into the space. And that is something that we have been desperate to have within the Torquay community group in and of itself. Anglesey has a place to go. Lorne has a theater. Winchelsea has a theater. Torquay does not have a dedicated space of their own for performance. And for me, that magic that only exists in a theater that's been around for 60 years, even if it's just a rehearsal hall and a yoga place, when it turns into a theater, as Nikki said, just the sense of belonging, the sense of the ghosts, the sense of creativity and spirit within a theater cannot be matched by just having a place that you maybe get to frequent once every couple of or for a couple of weeks, once or twice a year in some of the more hardcore sort of profit-driven theaters. Community theater is just vital, and that's what we have been trying to the message that we've been trying to get across to those who are in power that make these decisions that will allow us to have these spaces, for them to understand what a theater is for the community. It's all of those things that we have been talking about that are so important. And that was really what has driven me, along with the troupe, of course, but on a personal level, what has really driven me to want to see the current theater project that we're hoping to achieve succeed. And it's not just a place to get up and perform. It is a home. It is a place of warmth and a place of joy, and a place to come and do all of those beautiful things that exist within the community.
You know what, Michael? About 3 or 4 years ago, my husband and I were in the Aran Islands, off the coast of Galway, and we stayed a night or two on the tiniest of the Aran Islands. The population of the island was about 280 people. That island had a community arts centre with a 75-seat theatre. And we wonder why great theatre comes out of Ireland.
Because everybody,
if you have those resources there, if companies have that ability to have a meeting place somewhere where new people know that they can turn up on a Saturday afternoon and someone will welcome them, introduce them, have a cup of coffee with them and a talk, show them how to build some sets, talk to them about the next project. It's such an opportunity that it's very, very hard to create when you haven't got a place to call home.
Absolutely, with 100% agree with that. If there is no space, and like I said, a theater in and of itself, it's not like necessarily a sporting arena where you can. Now, granted, look, a lot of sporting arenas, since we're in Australia and sport's really important, there's also that spiritual home, and that's what we're trying to create in Torquay and having the space. We don't have a spiritual home here in Torquay. To call our own, to build that, we don't have 75 seats where somebody can go and say, I don't know anything about this, but it looks interesting. How do I know if I'm involved or interested in wanting to be involved in lighting? I don't know anything about it. Well, we as the Torquay Theatre Troupe and as a community, we can't say, well, come on down and just have a play with the lights, because we don't have that. That doesn't exist. So that is it, just to say there's an island of 230 people and they have a 75-seat theater just is mind-blowing to me. That's just awesome.
It is awesome. And Maryanne, getting back to the beginnings of Torquay Theatre Troupe, I know that council's encouragement to you, to give you the opportunity to get TTT off the ground as a project. Could you talk a bit about how that actually happened? You were very nurtured by council back in those days.
It had the council was running the Casarina project at the time, which was a leadership project to show how to drive the ground. And we had drifted down to 3 members at that stage, and thought was going on. But I did the Casarina project. It was one Friday a month for a year. And you learned how to run meetings, little hints like put all of these in them at the table, what a difference that makes. And I had notes here. It was a fantastic, so everybody who did the project had a community development idea for their community, like the CFA, development, and then there's a gay heart somewhere, and everybody who did it actually got their project up running, which was very good.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so we're getting towards the end of our talk, Janine.
Hello, can I just add something onto Michael's beautifully articulate and impassioned overview and plea for for Torquay Theatre Troupe. There's two things I'd like to just say about what you shared, Michael. One of them is, look at what Torquay Theatre Troupe does and has been able to do without a dedicated space. And now imagine what it could do with a dedicated space. You know, what you create, what you achieve, you know, the smell of an oily rag. And I know that you're very grateful for the senior sits space. I know that you are, because I've worked with you, and it is great to have that. So that was the first thing. Look what you do already and imagine what you could do if you had a dedicated space. And the other thing, I guess, that we've been talking about a bit today is the next stage. You know, what happens for the future? What happens for those people who want to be nurtured, need to have the skills, have the opportunities to kind of play around with the lights, as you say. And I guess the thing to be thinking about is, what's the growth phase? You know, how does the community and the council that serves that community plan for a growth phase for the arts so that it doesn't fall over? You know, both companies, people, Nikki and Maryanne, have talked about those critical moments in the history of our theatre companies where it could have gone one of two ways. You know, it could have fallen over. And Janet, you talked about theatre companies that might do 2 or 3 shows and they do fall over, but we haven't. We've got longevity. So we're the proof of our capacity to create theatre in our region is we've got the runs on the board. And I guess the thing that we do appreciate from the council, certainly from my point of view, in terms of the new upgrade that's going to, you know, I'm sure happen, really, you know, it's imminent, which is fantastic. And the support that we have received genuinely over a number of years with our arts people who are on the council with the arts portfolio, we've always felt incredibly supported by the people who've worked and who come along to our performances and come along to the festivals. And it has been a great, it's been a great show of support with APA and what we do. But we can't do everything on our own. As you say, Michael, there are people who control the purse strings who, I suppose, need to be thinking a little bit about how do we give encouragement to groups of people who have turned up year after year after year and continued to enrich the cultural life of our community. We've done our bit, I suppose, and what I guess you're saying is that we need to be met halfway. We don't need you to turn up to cold halls on winter nights and rehearse for hours and hours. We'll do that kind of, maybe just open up the purse. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. I think funding is obviously crucial. Janet, I don't want to take over if you have something we need to talk about just quickly, but I'll just echo that. Obviously, funding for any arts endeavor, whether it's theater or visual arts or whatever, obviously is crucial. Support from those who are in power and have access to the purse strings are also crucial. And without those, these sort of things do eventually meet an end because they are run by volunteers for volunteers, and you can only get so much out of everybody before they just simply run out of steam. And that support, that financial support, is so important because not everybody is interested in playing sports. There's plenty of people out there who will need to find their tribe, as has already been said, in someplace else. And sports are great, but man, the arts are also a massive part of who we are as human beings. We need to have an artistic outlet, and that has to be met by the community. Communities are here to support. Councils are here to support the communities. We all pay our taxes to support communities. Not everybody wants to necessarily chase a ball around a field. Chasing a ball is great, but not for everybody. There's going to be people who want to have someplace else.
We need both.
Absolutely.
This is what a healthy culture is. It serves the needs of all the citizens and the aspirations. And a creative society is a clever society because creativity breeds imagination.
Yes,
and innovation.
absolutely. And innovation And that the creative ones are the ones who will solve the problems of the world. This is how we step out of where we are into the next phase of whatever it is that we might be confronted by, is by those who are creative and think in a creative way.
I think that's a fantastic statement, Michael. I'm going to leave our conversation there because that is a great way to leave it. And I'd like to go over to Stacey now for questions. Thank you, Stacey.
That was a great wind up to that conversation. And yeah, just if anybody is actually wondering, I did have Fred Preston, from who I believe is a Torquay Theatre Troupe member.
Yes, he is.
Has answered the question in relation to the multidisciplinary arts centre. Is that what it's called at the moment? But that council has provided a sum in their 2020 and 2021 Shire budget for a fit out of the old Sport and Rec Centre that's in Torquay. And so the Shire is currently supportive, but he does make a great point in saying that it's all got to be a community effort. And so if we want this, and I think Nikki said this before, you know, build it and they will come, because I know that many from many different parts of the arts have been wanting an arts centre for quite some time, a dedicated space, not a shared space with other people and other groups. And you're right, Janet, in that it doesn't have to be an either or thing. It's not it's not sport versus the arts or anything like that.
No,
you know,
no. It is.
I think to be
a
great, diverse and inclusive and interesting community, we need all of these things. So yeah, so that's a great conversation today. And we didn't have a great deal of questions. There's just a lot of people making lots of really great comments on their experiences over the years, seeing some performances and with both the Torquay Theatre Troupe and the Anglesey Performing Arts. So that was awesome. But there was a specific question that Fred did put to the group about youth involvement, and he asked, what attributes are young aspiring actors looking for? Is it more to do with the space, the audience, the company, or the play? You know, like in your experience, I guess, in working with youth. Can anyone speak to that, Janine?
I will. Really on the basis of I had bringing lots of students in over the years to work with Anglesey Performing Arts, and I know that last year in particular, I had a number of students who just adored working on the festival and said, I'm signing up for this, you know, forever. In fact, the person who's been doing lighting for the last couple of years was a year 12 student who came in at year 12, much more interested in techie stuff. And so she said, sign me up for life. And other students who have gone on to do performing arts degrees and wanting to, you know, become professional stage managers, saying, let me know when it's happening. I think that's, you know, that it is that apprenticeship, but it is kind of learning from those people who've come before. I think too often younger people find out when they're in secondary school that it is something that they love, and that it may not be something that they can do as a career, you know, as Michael mentioned earlier, but it isn't something that they want to give up on once the opportunities at school dry up and they leave. So the community theatre companies are where people come, you know. I'm not going to rant on much more longer. I'm not quite sure if I had a thought, and I think I might have lost it, but is that kind of, it was Fred asking, you know, what do young people want from the, there, I'm back on. You know, in answer to your question, Fred, from my very anecdotal experience, what the young people who are involved, not only actually is backstage, but last year with our Anglesey Performing Arts one act plays we had a number of younger actors involved. And I think they want to be with their people too. I think they want to have those opportunities to perform outside of school. Again, Michael, you were talking about the diversity of age groups and not just pretending that, you know, your friend who's in year 12 is 45, but actually working with somebody who's, you know, the age that their character is supposed to be. I think they want those opportunities to continue to learn, to continue to feel like they're a part of a tribe of people who are like them, and it's fun. I mean, I think, you know, we are volunteers. Why do we do it? Well, we do it because we have a lot of fun. You know, we are growing, we're learning. A lot of us are lifelong learners because, you know, we continue to love what we do, and we seek out those opportunities in the theatre companies that are around us. So I think that's what theatre companies offer young people, but maybe other people have got something to share and add.
I think Gay Bell, who's from Torquay Theatre Troupe, she actually added into the chat that it's not only the acting experience, but also the sound, lighting, costume and set design, you know, and you know,
absolutely,
building enthusiasts. Like, there's lots of different experiences that you can have within a theatre company, and not just being in front of people. You can also be behind the scenes.
If I could, Stacey, it's also not just it's not even just about the people who are involved in the technical side of it, or up on stage, or even backstage. There's a whole swathe of people who are also involved with helping with publicity, or front of house, or in the serving tea and biscuits, or finding props. All of these people, the volunteerism within the community theaters it's massive. It doesn't, as Nikki I think said, this thing doesn't work unless there's just an army of people who show up to take care of things like the finances. Who's going to be your accountant? Well, we have a guy who's that's all he does. He doesn't want to do anything else. He likes being in charge of the bar as well sometimes, but he's the accountant. And so the theaters are really representations of the entire community of people who are just dedicated to something. It doesn't have to be on stage or behind the stage. It is just an army of volunteers. And those volunteers are so crucial to making the thing work.
I'm not even sure if this is a question, but that can be answered well anyway. George Carmen's asked, could the Torquay Theatre Troupe and APA describe how many actors they have processed, in inverted commas, and how many volunteers are involved in each production? I can only imagine.
I guess it depends on the show that we're doing. And, you know, if we have a smaller cast, then there'll be smaller numbers. But just like Michael was alluding to, there is like an army of people, regardless of if it's a 2-hander show or a 5-hander or whatever. There's an army of people who have to do the front of house and support the show, and in a producing sense, get the show up. So I would think, you know, like if I just think of the 12 productions, say, that I've done over the last 18 years, it's not just one production. Like, many times we'll do a season in Anglesey. We've had seasons in Drysdale, Geelong. We went to La Mama. Like, so if you start to incorporate this one show that you've created, and then you have just taken it on the road a little bit, you all of a sudden have just, you know, you're not only you've got a lot of people involved, but you've broadened your audience like hugely. You all of a sudden are performing to a Melbourne audience or a Drysdale audience, or people who go, AP what? What's APA? Like, they don't even have any sense. And, you know, often people in Geelong go, is there a theatre company down at Anglesey? Like, it's like this kind of, you know, people don't know about it, but so many people. And I know that I go to Torquay Theatre Troupe and I go and see a show there, and I'm just like, man, they got the full kitchen crew. Would you like tea? Would you like coffee? Complimentary biscuits? Like, it's going on. You get sherry when you walk in. Like, it's just, you know, going back to that smell and going back to that sense of, you know, I've just walked into something that is filling my cup. And that's, you know, I think that's a wonderful thing to do.
Yep, for sure. Volunteerism, you know, number wise, boy, the amount of actors that we've processed, to answer George Carmen's question, I don't even know. It's just been a swathe. I mean, it's almost 20 years worth of people who have come and gone. Yeah, there's a core group of people, but outside of that core group of people, we've had just squillions of actors come across the stage who have either got their start, or who have come back to us, or who have been involved for a short period of time and then have gone on to do other things or not. But also the volunteers, like we said, you know, every show that we put up, it could be 40 or 50 people just to have 3 people or 4 people on stage producing and giving an audience something that they want to experience. So it's a massive amount of people, and that changes all the time too. And people like to just show up for one night and volunteer. That's exciting for them. That gives them purpose. That gives them a reason to go out.
I think to wrap it up, Catherine Rowe made a really lovely comment, and my son's going to walk in at exactly the wrong time. And she says, going to the shows over the years, I've been amazed by their diversity and talent and ability to evoke audiences' emotions. One season we'll leave laughing our heads off, and the next season we're left speechless and deep in thought. So such dedication and commitment is inspiring. It says, thanks, guys, and looking forward to next season. So that was from Catherine Rose. So that was a lovely and
That is lovely
comment to make there. So yeah, so thank you, everybody.
Man, and I'd like to just add up on top of that as well. That is why people want to go to the theater, because they want to have this cathartic experience. The human nature wants is just cries out to have some sort of emotional experience with somebody else, as Janine said, shoulder to shoulder, or perhaps it was Janet, that shoulder to shoulder experience. You just cannot buy that. And all of us now have been hanging out. We've been sitting there watching Netflix, great shows on Netflix, but do you have the same emotional experience as you would if you were sitting with somebody else in a space, having a shared emotional reaction from an actor on stage? You can't buy that. You cannot buy it. You can't bottle it. You can't put it in a pill, although many people have tried. You simply need to have it as an experience. And that's the power of theater.
Certainly is. I think, when I hear the way you all speak with your absolute passion for what you do, it's very humbling to me to hear that, because what you bring to your audiences is a great gift. And it's obviously valued. Whenever there's someone sitting in a seat in front of you, that shows that you are valued, doesn't it? So I congratulate you all, and I thank you all for your enormous contribution to life and artistic life here on the Surf Coast and beyond. And thank you so much for talking with me today, and thank you, Stacey, for all your help too.
No problem, Janet, and thank you. So thank you, everybody, for coming along today. It's been a fantastic talk, and it looks like from all of our from our chat here that everyone has really enjoyed it as well. So yeah, go well, everyone. Your combined efforts are well appreciated by the community. Greatly enjoyed the panel session. Thank you for filling my cup this morning. It's lovely to see all new faces on stage and behind the scenes, and Fleur has said, send this talk to ScoMo. So that was really a nice thing to wind up on, how important the arts is for everyone. So thanks everybody for joining us this morning out there in Facebook and Zoom land. So don't forget to tune in next Sunday for the next in our big picture topics, and I'll be in conversation with Deidre Carmichael, Richie Bennett, John Foss and Peter Day, and we'll be talking about how our love for the environment influences art. We'll be talking about art activism and place. So, and also this afternoon, continuing with our theatre and performing arts and music theme, we've got Jeremy Hamm, who's hosting a performative workshop in his computational transformations of music and sound, which it just sounds incredibly interesting, and I have no idea what that is. So I'll be tuning in just to find out what Jeremy's all about, and so hopefully we'll see you there. And don't forget, if writing is more your thing, we've got lots of different writing things coming up, including next Tuesday night. We have Words by Write here in Surf Coast, which is a local group of writers that get together once a month, but they'll be presenting a night of readings from well-known Surf Coast writers, Mark Smith, Steph Gemmell and Miranda Luby, along with a few other members of the Write Here group. They'll be doing some readings and talking about their writing. So for details on everything else that we've got going on Portal, just go to surfcoastartstrail.com.au. I'd like to thank all of our panellists again for coming along this morning, and thank all of you for tuning in and listening to the great conversation. And so we will see you all soon. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.